Ethan Cole lived in a small Florida neighborhood where every house looked almost the same. The lawns were short, the fences white, and the morning air smelled of cut grass and warm sunshine. He had chosen this place because it was quiet. After years of serving as a Navy SEAL, Ethan wanted a place where he could raise his little boy in peace. His son Aiden was 6 years old, full of energy, and the reason Ethan smiled again after so much loss. 3 years earlier, Ethan had lost his wife Laura in a car accident. Her laughter still echoed in his mind on calm nights when Aiden was asleep. Sometimes when Ethan sat alone on the porch, he would close his eyes and remember her gentle voice, asking him to promise her that he would protect their son. That promise was the one thing that guided every choice he made since that day. Every morning, Ethan woke before sunrise to jog around the block. He liked the rhythm of his feet hitting the pavement. It helped him keep control over the memories that tried to pull him back to darker days. After jogging, he would make breakfast for Aiden. Usually pancakes, shaped like circles that somehow always came out uneven. Aiden would laugh and say, "Dad, my pancake looks like Florida again." Those moments melted the hardness inside Ethan's chest. One Saturday afternoon, the world seemed perfect. The weather was warm, and Aiden was playing in the yard with a toy truck. Ethan was fixing a loose board on the porch railing when a dark SUV turned the corner and parked near his house. He glanced up, noticing 3 men stepping out. They were dressed in neat polo shirts and cargo pants. Around their necks hung badges shining in the sun. The men looked too polished, too alert. Ethan's habits from the military never truly left him. He noticed how they spread out slightly as they approached, how one kept his hands near his waist as if ready for something. One of them, a tall man with slick hair, smiled and called out, "Good afternoon, sir. Homeowners Association inspection. Just routine. We need to check compliance with neighborhood standards." Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans and stood still. "Since when does the HOA send out 3 inspectors?" he asked, his voice calm but flat. The men exchanged glances. The tall one laughed lightly. "We've been getting more complaints about safety around here. Just making sure everything is all right, that your house rules are being followed." The way he spoke made Ethan's stomach tighten. He saw the second man look at Aiden, and then whisper something to the third. That small gesture turned caution into alarm. Ethan slowly stepped between his son and the 3 visitors. Aiden stopped playing, his toy truck frozen in his small hands. "Mind if I see your identification up close?" Ethan asked. His voice carried no fear, only measured authority. The tall man reached into his pocket, but Ethan's eyes caught the small bulge beneath his shirt, the outline of a weapon, not standard for HOA workers or security. "This will just take a minute," the man said, stepping forward. Ethan placed his hand lightly on Aiden's shoulder. Every nerve in his body burned awake. He had learned long ago to listen to that voice inside him, the one that saved him countless times overseas. The moment one of the men moved toward Aiden, Ethan's instincts reacted faster than thought. In one rapid motion, he twisted the man's wrist, pulled him off balance, and brought him to the ground. The man cried out as his arm bent the wrong way. The second intruder tried to reach inside his shirt. Ethan struck low with a sharp movement, knocking the breath from him before disarming him completely. Both men were on the ground before the third had even fully understood what was happening. The last man took one look at Ethan's eyes and ran back to the SUV. The vehicle roared away, leaving marks on the road. Ethan stood still, chest rising, his mind trying to calm the rush of adrenaline. He looked down at the 2 men groaning on his porch, fake badges, fake smiles, and hidden weapons. This was no simple visit. Aiden clung to his father's hand, his little face pale but calm. "Dad, who were those men?" he asked quietly. Ethan knelt down, checking to make sure his boy was unhurt. "They were pretending to be helpers," he said softly. "But they were bad men. They wanted something they couldn't get." He hugged Aiden close, feeling the child's heartbeat against his chest. The police were on their way. "Oh." Ethan called them with steady hands while keeping an eye on the 2 intruders lying on the ground. Deep inside, he already knew the truth. This was not a random event. Someone had planned this. They had come for his son. As sirens began to echo in the distance, Ethan stared at the quiet houses around him. Each one looked untouched, peaceful, unreal. He had hoped for a normal life, one free from battle and shadows. But as the flashing lights approached, He understood that peace was never something you were given. It was something you had to fight for every single time. Ethan stood still while the police cars filled the street with flashing red and blue light. Neighbors came out to watch, whispering to each other. The quiet life he had built cracked open like thin glass. He answered the officers' questions calmly and clearly. His voice was steady, but his mind jumped through each memory, each movement, making sure he had seen everything right. The two injured men on the ground refused to answer any questions. One of them kept repeating that it was a mistake, but Ethan knew better. Mistakes did not come with hidden weapons and fake badges. After the officers took the men away, Ethan and Aiden sat together inside the house. The front door was still open. The late afternoon light stretched across the floor. Aiden leaned on his father's arm, half asleep and still shaken. Ethan brushed his son's hair from his forehead and felt the same old pulse of fear rise under his skin. The war had never quite left him. It only slept. Now it was awake again. When the last police car left, Ethan locked all the doors and walked out to the porch. The air smelled of dust and gasoline. He saw the marks on the wood where the men had fallen. Something about that image made his chest tighten. He looked across the street at the houses lined in perfect rows. It was strange how normal everything looked after chaos had just passed. That night, Ethan sat beside the window instead of sleeping. He kept a small light on, holding a cup of cold coffee. In his mind, he was replaying the moment again and again. The way those men moved, the way one kept glancing toward Aiden, the way the third man ran the moment Ethan fought back. They had not come to steal money. They had come for his son. When morning came, a woman arrived from the local police department. Her name was Lily Sanders. Ethan had met her long ago when she worked as a nurse during his recovery after one of his missions. She had kind eyes, but also the same kind of strength he recognized in soldiers. Time had changed her hair to a darker shade and given her face more lines, but her voice was still calm and sure. Lily asked questions the other officers had missed. She looked at the fake badges, then examined the report Ethan had filed. "These are not cheap copies," she said quietly. "Someone had them made by a professional. This was planned." Ethan nodded. He appreciated how she said things straight and simple. He placed another cup of coffee on the table for her. Aiden was in the living room drawing with crayons. Every now and then he would glance toward them, as if making sure his father was still there. Lily looked at the boy and then at Ethan. "He's tough," she said softly, "like his dad." Ethan tried to smile, but it came out more as a tired curve of his mouth. Lily stayed for a while, collecting information. She asked if anyone new had moved into the neighborhood recently. Ethan told her about a few new families, but said that these men had not belonged to any of the houses nearby. She listened carefully and took notes. There was something different in her tone when she spoke again. "I've seen something like this before," she said. "Groups pretending to be local inspectors or security. They test homes, look for weak spots, then target families. But this one seems different. It came straight for your son." Those words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He had guarded secret bases, crossed dark seas under fire, and carried men on his shoulders through sandstorms. But the idea of anyone trying to hurt his child made his hand shake. Later, after Lily left, Ethan searched the internet for the name printed on one of the fake badges. The company logo showed up in several strange reports connected to missing children. Each story started the same way, with fake inspectors or neighborhood workers. He scrolled through every detail, feeling the pieces begin to fit together. He went to check on Aiden, who had fallen asleep on the couch with his toy truck still in his hand. Ethan covered him with a blanket and stood watching him breathe. In that small moment, every part of Ethan's purpose was clear again. He could not leave this to the police. He knew how slow systems worked. He also knew the kind of people who organized things like this did not stop unless forced. He went to the garage, opened an old trunk, and found the small box he had promised never to touch again. Inside was a folded uniform, a few medals, and one carefully cleaned knife. He did not plan to use it, but holding it reminded him of who he had been. The steady beat in his chest returned, a calm rhythm that told him he could face whatever was coming. As midnight settled over the neighborhood, Ethan sat back down near the window. Somewhere far away, a dog barked, and then silence fell again. He was thinking about Laura, about how she would have looked at him with worried eyes, but proud at the same time. He whispered to the empty room, "I'll protect him, Laura, always." Then he turned off the light and let the night fade into another uncertain day that waited just beyond the horizon. Ethan woke early the next morning and looked out the window. The sun was slow to rise, and the dew still covered the grass like a thin silver layer. He had not slept much, his mind turning again and again over everything that had happened. The image of those men, their false badges, their cold eyes, stayed fixed in his head. He had cleaned the porch the night before, but it still carried the heavy memory of what had taken place there. Aiden came into the kitchen, dragging his small blanket behind him. He yawned and climbed onto a stool. Ethan smiled and poured him a glass of milk. He tried to act normal to keep the morning calm, but a part of him stayed alert. He knew danger was still near in some unseen way. He could not let fear show in front of his son. Later that day, Ethan heard a car stop outside. Lily Sanders stepped out wearing plain clothes and holding a black folder under her arm. She looked calm but focused. When she walked to the door, Ethan noticed she had dark circles under her eyes, as if she had also stayed up half the night studying the case. "I checked the identifications from yesterday," she said when he invited her inside. "They belong to a private security company that shut down 2 years ago. Someone is using the name to move around without raising questions." She placed photos on the table showing the fake badges and one of the men who had escaped. Ethan studied the images. His eyes followed every detail, scanning for something familiar. "These people were not random," he said. "They planned this. They wanted Aiden." Lily nodded slowly. "I think you are right. There is a pattern behind it. I found similar reports in 2 other towns. The same kind of fake visits, the same type of vehicle, the same logo." Ethan leaned back, his jaw tightening. "How could they target us here? This was supposed to be a safe area. Sometimes the safest places hide the deepest secrets," Lily replied. She spoke lightly, but her eyes carried weight. Ethan looked at her across the table. It had been years since he had seen her. Back then he was a broken man lying in a hospital bed trying to walk again. And she was the nurse who made him believe that life outside the battlefield could still have meaning. He remembered her words back then, calm and steady, telling him that love would heal more than time could. He had never forgotten that, and now here she was again, standing in his kitchen, helping him protect the only thing that mattered more than his own life. Aiden came from the living room carrying his drawing book. He showed Lily a picture he had made of a boat with 3 people on it. "That's me, my dad, and maybe you," he said with a small smile. Lily laughed softly and thanked him. Ethan watched the exchange, feeling his chest tighten again, but this time it was not from fear. It was something warmer, something he had not felt in a long time. When Lily left that afternoon, she gave Ethan her number and told him to call if anything strange happened. Before she turned to go, she said, "I am not giving up on this. Whoever did this will try again. They don't stop until they get what they want." Ethan stood in the doorway watching her car drive away. The evening light fell across the street, long shadows spilling over the lawns. The world looked peaceful, yet every quiet sound felt different now, like a warning wrapped in silence. That night, Ethan put Aiden to bed early and sat at the dining table with his laptop. He followed every clue Lily had mentioned and found a trail of news articles that painted a terrible picture. Families taken from their homes, unsolved disappearances, and false security teams all connected by one name. Whoever was behind it had money, skill, and reach. This was not local crime. This was organized and precise. He closed the laptop and looked at the picture on the wall of him and Laura holding baby Aiden by the beach years ago. Her smile reminded him of calm seas. He traced her image with his eyes and whispered, "It's starting again, Laura, but I won't lose him." Outside, a car drove slowly down the street. The engine sound faded, then stopped. Ethan felt his body tense for a moment. He moved to the window and checked, but it was only a delivery truck across the road. Still, he felt uneasy. He decided to prepare for every possibility. He checked the locks again, repositioned the cameras around his house, and made sure his phone was charged. Nothing was going to surprise him this time. When he finally sat down, he caught sight of Aiden's drawing still on the table. The small picture of the boat now looked like a promise. Ethan knew he was beginning a new kind of mission, one without guns or uniforms, but just as important. There was something strange in the neighborhood, something hidden behind polite smiles and neat fences. But he also felt a change stirring, a quiet strength returning inside him, drawn by the thread that connected him to his son and the woman who had once saved his heart. The next few days passed, like a slow storm waiting to break. Ethan spent his time guarding his house and keeping Aiden close. He took his son to school and brought him back himself. Every car that slowed near his street made him watch a little longer than before. He felt something shifting around them, invisible but strong, like a shadow under sunlight. Lily called him every evening to share updates. Her voice came through the phone steady but urgent. She told him she had found more links between the fake HOA men and a company that claimed to provide community security. The company had no real address, just mailboxes rented across different towns. It was a mask for something else. Ethan listened in silence. "They are looking for children of military families," she said. Her tone was low, careful. "Someone told me they sell information to buyers outside the country. They know veterans try to keep low profiles." "You are not the first one they approached." Ethan felt heat rise through him, anger mixing with disbelief. "They thought I would not notice," he said. "They thought they could walk into my home and touch my son without a fight." That night, Ethan began to prepare. He went into the garage and took out the small storage box again. Inside, he kept a few old tools from his service days, a simple first aid pack, and a radio. He never wanted to use them again, but now they were as necessary as air. He drove with Lily the next morning to a nearby town where another attack had taken place. The two of them stood beside a quiet playground. A family had vanished from a house just 2 streets away. Neighbors told them they had seen 3 men wearing the same fake badges knocking on doors a few days before. "It's a chain," Lily said. "They test families in one town, then move to another. They blend in." Ethan looked around at the children playing, their laughter cutting through the calm air. He could not stop imagining what could happen if nobody fought back. A pain grew in his chest, heavy and sharp. He turned to Lily. "We need to end this, not later. Now," she agreed. They planned to follow the pattern of calls the men used. Lily had traced a set of phone numbers moving between towns. The path ended near an old warehouse outside the city, hidden by trees and an abandoned railway. She asked for backup from her department, but they said they needed more proof before they could act. Ethan was not surprised by that answer. "Then it's just us," he said. The warehouse sat far from the main road, surrounded by open fields. When they arrived near dusk, the sky was painted in deep orange tones. They parked the car behind an old truck and moved quietly toward the building. Ethan scanned the area, his senses alive again in ways he had not felt since his days in service. From an open window, they could see movement inside. Men were packing boxes and loading them into a van. Lily whispered, "They are moving everything away." Ethan studied one of the boxes through the window and saw papers with names and photos of families. His stomach turned. It was a list, a collection of targets just like him. "They have files on them all," he said. When one of the men stepped outside to smoke, Ethan moved fast and silent. He caught the man by surprise and forced him to the ground. The man tried to reach for his pocket, but Ethan stopped him with a firm grip. Lily came closer and pointed her phone light on the man's face. He was the same man who had escaped from Ethan's porch days earlier. He froze when he saw Ethan. "You," he said, eyes wide. "Who is your boss?" Ethan asked. The man shook his head and muttered, "You have no idea who you are dealing with." Before Ethan could ask again, the man pulled his arm free and ran into the dark field. Ethan chased after him but stopped when he heard sirens in the distance. A few moments later, police cars arrived. Lily had managed to call backup as they followed the trace signal from the phones earlier that day. Officers surrounded the place and began arresting the others inside the building. The sirens echoed across the empty land, bouncing off the metal walls. Ethan and Lily stood side by side watching as the officers carried boxes out as evidence. The one who had escaped disappeared into the woods, but now they had enough proof to stop the rest of the group. As the flashing lights lit up their faces, Lily turned to him. "You were right," she said. "This was planned to look like something small, but it was much bigger." Ethan looked toward the open field, calm but unrelenting. "They picked the wrong family," he said. When he got home later that night, Aiden ran to him and hugged him so tight He could barely breathe. Ethan lifted him into his arms and felt something deep settle inside. The danger was not over, but the fear no longer ruled him. He knew what he had to do if they ever tried again. He had found not only strength, but also the thread that tied him back to hope, and this time he was not alone. A soft rain fell across the roofs as morning came. The streets looked clean, washed of dust and fear, yet Ethan Cole knew the calm was only the surface. The group that had attacked his home was broken, but not gone. One man had escaped into the woods, and Ethan felt in his bones that the story was not finished. He made breakfast for Aiden and tried to keep things normal. The boy sat on the counter swinging his legs, talking about school and asking if the teacher would ever believe he had met real police officers at his house. Ethan smiled and said, "Maybe not." Inside, he was planning what came next. After Aiden left for school, Ethan stood on his porch watching the rain wash down the street. Each sound around him had meaning. A distant car door, a barking dog, the hum of the rain gutters. His instincts that once helped him survive deep missions, now tuned to ordinary life. He noticed when small things felt wrong, and one thing did. A black SUV passed slowly at the corner, the same type as before. Lily came by late in the afternoon. She wore her badge again this time, her uniform damp from the rain. She carried folders thick with reports and a new sense of determination. "We caught 2 more men hiding in an old motel," she said. "They gave us names." One name kept coming up, a man called Pierce Grady. He runs a private shipping company. He's the one who hires people like them. Ethan shook his head. If he planned this, he will try again. He won't rest while he's free. "That's what we think too," she said. "We have a trace on a warehouse owned by him near the coast, but the department is slow to approve any move until the paperwork clears." Ethan looked at her, knowing she understood his silence. "I can't wait for paperwork," he said. Before sunset, they drove toward the coast. The air smelled of salt and metal. Clouds rolled low and heavy. They parked far from the warehouse, hidden by tall grass near the fence. From the distance, they could see lights inside and hear the distant sound of waves hitting rocks. Ethan and Lily moved closer. Through a cracked window, they saw Pierce and several men loading metal crates onto a truck. Inside the crates were folders filled with names, photos, and empty passports. It was clear this was part of a large system that took children from families with little power to fight back. Lily whispered, "If we stop them now, it ends here." Ethan nodded and signaled for her to call the backup unit she had arranged quietly earlier. While she made the call, he moved toward the side door and waited. He felt calm, not from anger but from purpose. The rhythm of rain mixed with the slow beating of his heart. The door burst open when the police arrived minutes later. Lights and voices filled the wide space. Pierce tried to run toward the back exit, but Ethan was already there. Their eyes met for a short second. Pierce laughed and said, "You don't know what kind of world you are stepping into?" Ethan moved forward and blocked his path. "I've seen worse," he said. Pierce tried to pull a gun, but Ethan struck his arm away. The weapon fell, and they fought across the wet floor until Pierce fell to his knees. The officers rushed in and took him away. When it was over, Lily walked up beside Ethan. Rain dripped from her hair, and her hands still shook slightly. "You kept your promise," she said. "You protected your son and stopped them." Ethan looked at her, breathing softly. "We both did." The next morning brought clear skies. Aiden waited outside holding his school bag when Lily stopped by again. She knelt down and told him that the bad people were gone now. He nodded and said, "My dad told me to always be brave." "I was brave." She smiled and said he was. Ethan stood on the porch watching them. For the first time since Laura's death, the weight on his heart began to lift. He had fought again, but this time for hope, not just survival. When Aiden left for school, Ethan walked to the backyard. The old rosebush Laura had planted bloomed again after being bare all winter. He knelt beside it, planted a small wooden stake, and tied a new ribbon on it. Beside it, he planted a young oak sapling, called it their tree of promises. Lily joined him later, bringing 2 cups of coffee. They sat on the steps while the sun climbed higher. She said quietly, "It's strange how life leads us back to where we need to be." Ethan looked at her and nodded. "We find our way," he said. In the distance, he could hear children laughing from the schoolyard. He knew the danger would always exist somewhere in the world, but for now his home was safe. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and flowers, and Aiden's drawing of the boat still hung on the fridge. On that paper, 3 stick figures held hands on the deck, floating together across calm water. Ethan watched the trees sway lightly in the wind and felt at peace. He had built a quiet life once and lost it. Now, he had built it again, shaped by pain but filled with love. The war inside him had finally ended, replaced by the simple strength of a father keeping his promise.